Okay, so now we're gonna start, and we're gonna have Jacqueline Maurice come up to tell us about the rocks. Jacqueline, are you around? Great. Dr. J.
So good afternoon to everyone. What a beautiful lunch and what a beautiful gathering, blessing, prayer, and ceremony and action it really has been the last 72 hours. Thank you, Melanie. I get to complete my presentation, if you want to look at it like that, from a couple days ago. A few of you have been gifted with a stone already, from my heart to yours. And it is important for me to give back and give back to our home fires. So here's the teaching of the stones, and it's my gift to you, to each one of you. And I have a helper to ensure if you haven't received a stone already, including those that have to leave early, you will now. So you can ensure everyone will receive one. The teachings of the stone. So before I left Saskatoon, I did ceremony, a little smudging, a little blessing, and asked for a little direction to the northwest, which is our mother. Where's Jean? Right? Jean? Yeah. Truly. Yeah, truly. And the qualities or the teachings that I put into each stone were strength, endurance, vision, and courage. So you can almost dance to that one too, eh? Yeah, so you have to remember that. It's not about writing it down, but hold that in your heart. And when you pick a stone, just pick one intuitively, one that speaks to you. The other thing is, I was talking to our presenters this morning, and stones are great for elders. Stones are great for kids, for elementary school children. And the name of our presentation this morning, We Matter, right? So I said, please, I want to gift you with a We Matter stone for when you feel lost, or when you need to be grounded, or when you need direction. This will give you strength. And so they took one. And the other thing is, what I often teach, no matter what age, I always say, stones are of our ancestors. Stones are used in our ceremony. Stones are of spirit. And like us beautiful, strong Métis women, stones endure many conditions and weather many conditions and endure many seasons. And we now come into this season of spring, a beautiful transformation, which our women of the Métis Nation are continuously embracing. And importantly, stones are also here long after us, so we leave behind our teachings, and they are passed on to the next generation, to our children, our grandchildren, and as our presenters said this morning, to the infants coming into this world. And that's the teaching of the stones. So they're of our ancestors and of spirit. And it's my gift to you. I also said to our presenters from We Matters, and this is for everyone here, stones also, we are helpers and healers naturally, as we learned from our very first presentation with Victoria, lateral kindness. And one thing I want to entrust you with is use this stone for yourself, because it's important to heal the healer. And we talk often a lot about training the trainer, but it's also important that we heal the healer, and that's each and every one of us. So Miigwech and my beautiful helper here, Haley the helper, got it there, and Dr. J, We're going to begin with our beautiful president, Melanie, and then don't worry, like I say, if you haven't had a stone, please just intuitively take one for yourself. And if you've already taken a stone, please just quietly pass on. Don't pass on. Oh my gosh. Okay, wait a minute. Edit. You know? Yeah, I know. We have fun at our table. They're a bad influence on me, this Alberta group. And if there's stones left over, then please come and take a stone for someone who may need a stone, someone that may need some guidance and direction. So miigwech. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your life.
Good afternoon. Could I get your attention for one moment? I'm time filling right now because Victoria is just packing right now, and then she'll be coming up. I had a great idea, and I really wanted to speak this before some of our group from BC is traveling back home. So recently, I won a writing competition in not even my second language right now. I'm studying Japanese at UNBC. And so, thank you. There was over 32,000 people who submitted their poems, mainly all from Japan that were native speakers. And so this spring I'll be published with 144 other Japanese people, and I'm the only non-Japanese person. So it made me come up with this idea that we want to revitalize the Mi'kmaq language. And so a good way of doing such a thing is having a writing competition and presenting this where it can be traditional and both contemporary to be getting those youth that are young to the older generations that want to do this writing. And if we did a book such as this for our whole nation, and we did an award ceremony in the motherland, it would really inspire young people, older people to really learn the language, or at least be able to write it in a poetic way to give our story or give younger people's versions of our story, because we didn't grow up with our culture. So to be able to present that in a way and show the world, and maybe like this Japanese competition that I was in, you might get people from around the world also submitting for this competition. So that was just an idea that I had that I'd like to see happen. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I would like to tell a story because I'm a great storyteller. No, I'm just lying. No, I'm not. I like telling stories. This story is about my mushroom and about how important it was back then to teach us about prayer. And he was a man that would take us to church in the morning, every night, pray before we go to bed, pray for our meal, and all that stuff. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my mushroom. We have a little bit of time here. Okay, so I'm going to start with from a little girl in the past, immersed in a practice as an Indigenous person. I enjoyed the simple, loving things in life. And I would like to tell you about some of the fondest memories and a story that I have shared whenever I can about my grandparents and how they had such a big influence on me. And some of the things that happened during the day and the night. I hope I have my story here anyway. The smell of porridge cooking over a wood stove was something that will stay in my mind forever, and I will never forget. Mushroom had a way of making miracles, cooking early in the morning and creating smells that only rich people knew. We were a large family. We were the Mackays. We lived along the road allowance and close to the water. My fondest memories were many. Today, I will write about how our day began. One ska, get up, my cookum would say. It's time to start the day. Go wash your face. Cookum would say, as Liz and I and a few cousins slept at Cookum and Mushroom's house. Our bed was made on the floor, as our house was built, was a one-room place, a mansion to all her grandchildren, and royalty. Felt like royalty. We had, as I remember, a bed made for princesses, a few pillows and blankets that were made into a mattress. And that's how we would sleep at our Cookum and Mushroom's house. We felt like that was the best thing in the world, being so close to our Cookum and our Mushroom. Our porridge was already in bowls with bannock and tea to drink as we got up. But before we even touched our porridge or our tea, we had to say grace. Each grandchild had to have a turn. As this task was so early in the morning, we must have been a sight, with shaggy hair, wrinkled clothes, and hungriness on our faces. This morning it was my turn to say grace. When Musum pointed at me and said, Kiegwa, it's your turn. I looked at him, I said, no, I'm not saying grace. I'm hungry, I need to eat. And I said that in my language. And being the little rebel I was, my mushroom looked at me and he said, Kia, tigiwi, tansima gawa nusim. You go home, my grandchild. He said, I don't know what's wrong with you. Musum called me a little turu, and I don't know if any of you speak Michif, but turu is a little bull with horns. So he wasn't really calling me a bull. So I got up off the table and I looked at Cookum, and she wouldn't go against Mushroom's word, right? Because we did have to pray. And I ran out of the house. And I ran home, crying and hollering. And I ran into the house, and my papa looked at me. Dan Samagakia. He said, what's wrong with you? And I was still crying. Mushroom cooked me out of his house. Koyat sin, he told me. Good for you. Dan situtamen mamina. And I told him, I said, I didn't want to pray. He told me, he said, I don't know what to do with you. He said, why don't you want to pray? I looked at him, I said, well, I pray all the time, Papa. I pray in the morning, I pray at night. I go to church with Mushroom and Cookum. I said, I am just tired of praying. So that was our life, like every morning, like his grandchildren had to say grace, eh? But be darned if we could eat at his table if we didn't say grace. So that's my story.
Here's another story. I'm going to ask you to stand, and I do want to share my Métis prayer while I'm here. God, our Creator, we thank you for guiding our leaders and elders to finally get recognized as a Métis Nation in our Canada. Today we walk tall with gratitude and great pride in the spirit and footsteps of our ancestors. April 16th, 2016, recognizing the Métis Nation as its own culture and identity. Métis people were finally citizens in our Canada. June 27th, 2019, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario signed self-government agreements with Ottawa. Bless our Métis flag, which symbolizes our ancestry of Aboriginal and European cultures. Bless the infinity symbol that suggests the Métis people will exist forever. Bless our fiddle and our feet so we can continue to share our dance, Red River Jig, Duck Dance, the Reel of Four, and the Drops of Brandy. Bless our Michif language, one of 20 Indigenous languages to be saved. Bless our anthem and the true story it tells of the Métis people. Bless our hands, head, and heart so we can continue to pass on the art of beading, painting, embroidery, sewing, and moccasin making. And bless our sash. Help us to honor and protect our sash for future generations. Bless our Métis veterans for their service and commitment to our Canada. God, our Creator, as we move forward, help our children and youth find the balance between past and present in tradition and spirit. Be proud of your Métis heritage. Our Métis culture is worth it. Tetwananan.
Hello? So I'm sorry for what seems like a big delay. We thought Victoria was going to be able to get back in the room faster than she is. Victoria is one of the delegates that has to leave. So the trauma-informed toolkit that we've been working so hard on, she wanted an opportunity to quickly be able to present that. So I'm trying to squeeze her in on the agenda. I should have tied her feet to the room, though. Sorry. So she sent me a text. She said she's on her way back to the room, so I apologize. But I have another youth that I want to tell so that it's on record. Her name is Charmaine. Don't point somewhere else. About a project that she wants to do for women of the Métis Nation, and we're going to find a way to resource her to do this. So, Victoria out of breath is here. Yes.
Good afternoon, ladies. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you cry today. So I don't know, this book is on the floor there with these Muppets. And I seen it with Mel, and I got so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, those would be the best brand ambassadors for LMFO. I said, you should get me to do the PR campaign for this. And we can bring them to life, give them a voice, and have them on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and kind of being the voice of women of the Métis Nation. And we can do factoids, announcements, you know, things like that. And it would be good for getting people engaged. Everybody of all ages would love it. Maybe teach one of these Muppets some Michif. I don't know. Just an idea, ladies.
Arturo and Steve. Oh, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. I didn't plan very well in terms of I should have packed my suitcase last night, but I was busy working on other things. Thank you. So it's my pleasure to be able to do a high-level overview this afternoon about our Métis Trauma-Informed Toolkit. One of our objectives at LFMO is trying to share information and educate you as women, share with our families and communities awareness about what is trauma, how does it impact us, how do we react from a physiological perspective that may be way out of our rational mind's control, and in what ways are we resilient, and how do we heal individually, in families, in community, as friends, as a sisterhood. And just before I launch into the PowerPoint presentation, just while I'm catching my breath, I just want to contextualize why I'm so passionate about this work. And a couple of my cousins are here, my first cousins are here, and my extended family, our extended family cousins are here as well. I realized from a very young age how deeply our family was impacted by intergenerational trauma, issues of sexual abuse and addiction, and how much we carry in my generation and our children's generation. And so it became an interest and a passion. How does this work? How do we stop this cycle? How can we be healthy? How can we express love? How can we be grounded? How can we not hold grudges for 20 or 30 years and separate from each other? How can we love each other? So this toolkit and a bunch of the other things that I have the privilege of working on come from that story of broken families impacted by colonization, racism, violence, domestic violence, all of those things that can happen to our people and to our families. And so I couldn't be more delighted to have my family here with me. It's been an interesting year for me. After working in trauma-informed settings for over 20 years, in the past year I experienced criminal harassment, crime, threats, all of these horrible things that I've been working, supporting staff and other people to deal with for the last 2 decades. So it was an opportunity for me to have to take a step back and have right in my face, how does trauma impact me as a woman, as a mother, as an individual, as a human being? And I really want to thank many women, friends, and family members in this room for being able to hold safe space for me while I work through that fear and uncertainty and tragedy and loss. So I believe that in our way and in Indigenous communities, we have to heal together. We don't go away and do self-help programs and go to therapy and heal on our own. We heal by getting together, being with one another in safe ways, and connecting. It's not a paradigm where you go away and have a white therapist heal you, and you can't come back until you're better. We heal together in an ongoing, loving way. Okay, so I know that we're kind of short on time. You guys have the toolkit, you will get the PowerPoint presentation, and what I encourage you to do, if you want to deliver this in your own community, is plan it out, customize it, have elders there, have healers there, have a counselor on hand, or have someone trained on hand, so that if you're delivering this and having rich discussions, you've got lots of support in case people get triggered, have anxiety. There's lots of somatic ways that we can heal, and one of the wonderful things about having tradition, dance, music, arts, crafts, artisan work is that it engages parts of our bodies and our minds that help us to ground. So we'll get to that in a bit. As always, we're trying to take a strength-based, authentic approach to this work. We've talked about strength-based the other day. Now let's just take a look at this wheel for a moment. When we're doing this work, when we're watching materials like we've watched over the past few days, we can be taken by surprise by the subject matter. We can be triggered in ways that we didn't expect, even in our kindness exercise. Though it was positive and wonderful when Doreen, our lovely elder Doreen, read me her kindness message, I had such a reaction in my body. It was like my grandmother was telling me that I was accepted. And it was deeply moving, and we had a positive transference, but it was deeply emotional. It can happen at any time. So we want to find ways to be present in the moment. If you're getting triggered by something and you need support, it's checking in, and Some of us were talking last night. At our next LFMO forum, we're going to approach Madam President about maybe having a few healing practitioners on hand in a wellness room where we can maybe have some healing touch, Reiki, traditional healers, maybe a chair massage, maybe just a special elders room where some of our healers and elders will take a little rotation where we can slip in there and do some one-to-one debriefing. So we do this together and as a community. So movement, breath, reminding yourself that you're safe. And yesterday I had to remind myself again and again, yes, I'm safe. I can take deep breaths. You know, recognizing what's present and happening now and not being triggered into the past or not having fear of the future. Staying present, looking around, engaging our senses. What can we see? What do we smell? What do we taste? Feeling our feet on the floor. So these are all things that we can practice together when we experience triggers or when we're talking about how do we ground in a group setting. So we've done a lot of work around and had a lot of conversations around what are foundations of a Métis-specific trauma-informed approach. We want to promote understanding of trauma and its impact. We want to enhance Métis-specific cultural competence. And in your toolkit and in some of the presentations that we had last year, there's lots of information specifically about our impacts of colonization, historical and contemporary, our traumas, our losses, our distinct experience as Métis people, Métis women, Métis LGBTQ2S+ people, Métis families, Métis men, Métis elders, Métis youth. Having a belief that healing happens in family, relationships, and community, believing that healing and recovery is possible. So when we're holding that strength-based belief that yes, healing and recovery is possible, and we can do it together, and we can support each other in it. Having compassion for yourself and others, being mindful, and developing that self-awareness muscle. When you may be getting triggered in the moment, just working on that mindfulness. What's happening for me right now? Why am I feeling so tired? Or why am I feeling so agitated? You know, so these are muscles that we can strengthen with each other through more learning and discussion and practice. And sometimes with the help of a really good therapist, an elder, or a support person. Okay, I'm gonna kind of speed through this a little bit. One of the key pieces about being trauma-informed is being non-judgmental with each other. Accepting that we all have our own healing path, we all have our own life experiences, and for people who experience trauma, especially some pretty serious trauma, it's something that happened to them. They are not a sum total of their experience or victimization. Coming to each other in that non-judgmental place, just holding that really safe space is totally important. Honoring people's choice, their self-determination, and their difference. We may not all choose to heal in the same way. And I've had some interesting conversations over the past few days. Sometimes people have very strong opinions, especially when they're in recovery from their own trauma. So I just encourage you, your healing journey is yours, mine is mine. And if I want to do traditional medicine, I may do that. If I want to really throw myself into other spiritual practices, what if yoga is my healing thing? What if I do decide to get medical treatment for anxiety or depression? Holding that safe, non-judgmental space. We all may have a different formula for healing, and that's okay. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so I really love this little graphic, and in your trauma-informed toolkit, there are many, many resources, websites, books, ideas for you to explore. Some of us may have a lot of knowledge about trauma-informed resources, trauma-informed therapies, or they may, you may be at the beginning of learning about that. So there's lots of ideas in here. The graphic that I've got up on the screen right now comes from Dr. Peter Levine and somatic experiencing therapy. So If you're interested in exploring ideas about how to heal trauma that are more grounded in the body and focused on strength and resilience, I would encourage you to look up somatic experiencing. There's lots of free tools, there's lots of practitioners, there are wonderful books that can really help us understand the body's role in healing. So healing and trauma therapy does not all have to be about retelling the same traumatic narrative over and over and over again. We can work with our bodies, our energy, our traditional practices, our culture, to help our nervous systems to become regulated and to move towards groundedness and then exercising and strengthening that muscle of self-awareness, grounded, being able to come to a place of wellness. Okay, so what is trauma? I'm just going to share this really simple definition. Traumatic experiences can be anything, but I love this definition. A real or perceived threat to life, limb, or dignity. So it can be an accident, it can be abuse, trauma, or neglect. It can be the experience of colonization. And I like the inclusion of the word dignity here. As Indigenous people in Canada, and particularly as Indigenous women in Canada, we experience assaults to our dignity all the time. We watch our children have experiences that assault their dignity. When we talked about lateral kindness and lateral violence the other day, there's all kinds of ways that trauma happens. From, it's very, very complicated. But when we think about triggering, it could be real, happening in the moment. I'm in a traumatic accident, I've experienced a loss, I've witnessed a death. Or it can be what's still living here in the mind. When I experience my next threat, it feels as real as when I was experiencing something perhaps more tangible. I'm really mindful about our time. And if we were going to do this right, we'd probably spend like a day doing trauma-informed awareness with lots of experiential practice. But I just want us to have a high-level overview. And if you're taking these resources and materials back to your community and planning a workshop, you can customize what we give you. You can work with other practitioners and healers and do it in a way that has time and processing and support. But I really appreciate the opportunity to give the overview today. So any one of us can experience trauma, and I'm 100% sure all of us in the room have experienced trauma in one form or another, past, present. Communities can be traumatized when events affect any of its members. Cultures can be traumatized when repeated denigration, attempts at assimilation, and genocide occur. And I just slipped in this little family photo. Cousins, can you recognize the individuals in that picture? They include your parents. Okay, so trauma responses. I think it's really important for us to remember and also assure other people that some of our trauma responses have been hardwired in since the beginning of, us as Neanderthals and then Homo sapiens. We're hardwired for survival. So some people may feel regret or shame about how their body has had them respond in traumatic moments. I think sometimes I don't know if you've seen this kind of pop culture show where they film, husbands and wives, and all of a sudden there's a threat that like a boogeyman jumping out of the bushes, and then the husband will hide and run away, and the wife is standing there saying, "Why aren't you protecting me?" I don't know if any of you've seen that, but to me it's a really good demonstrated example of threat happens, and you see how people's bodies are hardwired. Some people respond with fight and protection. Some people flee. They can't help it. Their body is taking over what happens in the moment. And for sexual abuse or sexual assault survivors, sometimes people feel so much shame about having frozen or disassociated in the moment. Your body is deciding in that moment, and your mind, our reptilian brain, is going to do whatever it can to protect us. And there's no shame in that. It's completely natural. However we're going to survive, that's going to be the response. So just a little photograph of the brain here, a little art interpretation. When we're rational, grounded, and able to think, we're in that brain where we're like, okay, how can I analyze this? What can I learn from this? When we're in our emotional state, am I loved? Am I accepted? What about my feelings? And then when we're in that survival mode, am I safe? And how the heck is safety going to happen here as quickly as possible? So really, when we're in fight, flight, or freeze, we don't have that ability to rationalize. It's all happening so fast. And as human beings, we're just hardwired that way. So here's another graphic, and I love this graphic. So this is showing what's happening in our nervous system in terms of regulation. So at the bottom there, our sweet spot, we're emotionally regulated, we're able to experience joy, we're grounded in the present, we can be compassionate, we can be mindful about what's happening to us, we can socially interact with others, we can be calm and peaceful in ourselves. Introduce some trauma or a trigger or a nervous system activator, that nervous system starts to jump up. Okay, so getting into the sympathetic nervous system, this is where we see fight or flight. So aggressive, I'm gonna protect myself. I gotta get the H out of here. I have to flee. And this is happening outside of our conscious mind. Remember, it's happening, our most primitive part of the brain is directing that. And then if it's all too much, our nervous system is so agitated, we're getting into that blue part there, freeze. We're gonna freeze, we're gonna hide, we're gonna make it through this horrible thing, this feeling, this experience, by going into nervous system freeze. So imagine an animal in the bush that's hiding for protection against a predator. We're hardwired like that too. So people that may go into freeze, it's a response, it's a natural response. But when we know what's happening, our goal is to be able to be mindful. Okay, this has happened. And support ourselves and support each other into getting back into that sweet spot. So it's easier to do probably with triggers, but if a traumatic incident happens, figuring out how with supports and with our choices, how we can get back into nervous system regulation is very empowering. Okay, so isn't that cute? Fight or flight, and then back into that sweet spot. And pets are really healing. I know there's a lot of people in this room that have pets. Unconditional love, safe touch, warmth, purring, cuddling. Pets can be very healing. So yeah, kitty, fight or flight, and then back into relaxation. Okay, so I'm not gonna, because again, I'm really mindful about time. In your toolkit and in the PowerPoint, there's a lot of descriptors about what happens in the body and what we might observe in each of those reactive states. And what we've chosen to do in our toolkit is just talk about fight, talk about flight, and talk about freeze. There are many other theorists and psychologists and writers that have integrated other types of responses, trauma responses, but for the purposes of our toolkit, we're just looking at primarily those three. So let's take a look at flight response here. People in flight may be observed leaving gatherings or meetings early, may have a hard time speaking up, staying in the room, or maintaining eye contact. Sometimes we might jump to the conclusion that that person might not be interested or doesn't want to participate, but they may be in a flight response. So just think about that for a moment. Have you ever maybe noticed that somebody has a hard time, especially if subject matter is involved that might be triggering, have a hard time staying put? So just things to think about, things to ponder. Sometimes we might make an assumption about people's behavior without really knowing what might be happening for them. Freeze response. Sometimes people in freeze trauma responses might seem forgetful, unable to make commitments. sometimes neglectful of self or others. A person in freeze might sometimes seem like they're not paying attention, or the behavior may be interpreted as unmotivated or lacking interest. So the person might be experiencing a trauma response like freeze. And for those of you who know a bit about dissociation, sometimes people's mind will just take them to a safe and comfortable place when there might be disturbing or triggering imagery, conversations. So it's just inviting us to get curious. I shared with Melanie yesterday or the day before, there was a video that we were watching that was intense, and we were talking about, that was intense. And I said, I almost feel embarrassed to say this because I know lots about trauma, but my mind just went somewhere. My mind just took me somewhere, and I was thinking about, and kind of working on something else in my mind for a few moments. It just happened. I kind of dissociated, but it's good to have that awareness. So holding yourself in compassion if you freeze. Sometimes people freeze during a traumatic event. This is natural. You can't control it, and it's okay. Hold yourself in compassion and hold other people in compassion. There's a campaign, it's called I Just Froze, and it's an empowerment campaign for women who've experienced sexual assault or other forms of sexual trauma where they've frozen. So it's good to see these kinds of trauma awareness coming out in social media and in sort of our public space so that women can be reminded, or men too, any gender, can be reminded, sexual assault survivors, I should say, can be reminded that a freeze response is people doing the best that they can and their body protecting them from what's going on. Okay, again, that nice graphic reminding us about the sweet spot. I'm going to just kind of go through this. There's lots of information in your toolkit about impacts on the body and responses of the body in response to a traumatic event or experience. So I'm not going to go into them all in depth, and we're going to kind of forward into a little bit of resilience talk and about wellness and about how some of the traditional activities that we engage in together can really support our healing. I'll just talk about this briefly. Traumatic stress over long periods of time has very dire at times or can be very serious long-term health impacts. Just that the level of hormonal flooding from stress, trauma has a lot of health impacts on us. So I would encourage you to look more into this if that's very important to you. And I think as Métis women and Indigenous women in general, looking at the impacts of severe stress over long periods of time, it's definitely part of our holistic view of health and about promoting health in our communities and families. Okay, so I wanted to include this, just some things to remember when supporting people who are impacted by trauma. And you can take a more in-depth look at this, but it even impacts us when we plan events. Predictability. If you're supporting survivors of trauma, it's good to have as much predictability as you can. Knowing, vaguely, we're going to be here together. This is the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about together, allowing us to prepare, allowing us to be able to identify people that we love and trust in the room. Who's going to be at this event? Oh, I know Jana's going to be here, Mel's going to be here, Suzanne's going to be here. Oh, I'm really glad because I've got some people that I feel really a lot of trust and love with. Space. Allowing each other to have space. If we know that someone that we love or that we care about or that we work with or that's in our community is going through something traumatic, being patient with them. Then we need safe space. We need to be held in safe space to make it through things. Recalibrating and not being judgy. I know in my life I've been called over-emotional, oversensitive. You take things too seriously. Well, sometimes we've got a valid thing that we're going through, anything we go through is actually valid. And so sort of, calming down on labeling ourselves or others as over-emotional, just allowing that space. Yeah, if we want to really support healing, just hold some safe space and not jump to judgment. Support, honoring people's choice. We talked about those trauma-informed principles. Again, if you're facilitating this in community, getting prepped with maybe even some exercises to do with people. Water is a great healer. When I've done healing groups with men before, I'd bring different tactile things like lemons and get the men to roll the lemons, and then we'd feel the lemons, we'd pass the lemons around, smell the lemons, and engage in some sensory stimulation. Water. If you need to get grounded quickly or you're working with someone who's experiencing severe anxiety, hands in ice water, splashing ice water on the face. Water can help to ground us in the present moment really quickly, bring us back to where we are. It's safe, it's free, it's available for the most part. So just investigating some of those grounding things. And practicing them together, practicing them with your kids, practicing them at events or workshops that you might hold in community. Working with your elders to develop other sensory activities, medicines. You can incorporate all kinds of things into grounding and wellness activities to help people come back to the present moment and have a positive association. Okay. Exercising our muscle of self-awareness, just trying to have that sort of check-in with yourself. What am I noticing? What am I feeling? What am I noticing in my body? Is my body telling me something? Maybe I need to get up, have a walk, have a check-in with myself. How am I taking care of myself physically and mentally? What am I doing for self-care, and what does that look like? How's my mental health? Experiences of trauma and mental health conditions like depression or anxiety, insomnia, they go hand in hand. So no shame, no judgment. How's our mental health? And if we need support with our mental health, who can I go to? Who can I talk to about it? Am I checking in with a doctor? Those types of things. How's my stress level? And what am I doing to help manage my own stress? Okay, so healing and health strategies for dealing with trauma. In addition to traditional activities, personal wellness awareness, exploring mental health treatment and making sure that if we're doing, training like this in community, or we want to be trauma-informed in community, taking a look. For example, if you're going to do this workshop at home, do a resource list that's specific to your community. Health clinic, mental health outreach, programs, invite them to come to your workshop and ask them, okay, we really want your service to be, Métis specific. How can we support you and your program or service in understanding Métis experiences of trauma and being culturally safe? So there's lots of opportunity here for us to identify resources at the community level and invite them to become Métis specifically trauma-informed. Okay, I'll skip through that. There's some very basic things that we can remind each other and remind people in workshops and connect swag to, for example. Trauma is so hard on our bodies with that constant release of hormones and that flooding of stress hormones. Water is one of the most healing things that we can do for ourselves. Lots of water, flushing out those stress hormones, lots of water, keeping us hydrated, and just really allowing things to flow out. Yeah, grab that water jug, fill up that glass, Carly. So when we're handing out that swag with our water bottles, we're supporting our mental health as well, right? Sleep, talking about rest and addressing sleep concerns that we might have. Sleep is a natural healer for our nervous system. I mean, unless we're talking about night terrors and nightmares and things like that, those do happen for trauma survivors. So something to be aware of. Food. Remember that old expression, HALT? Are you hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Sometimes trauma survivors may not be nourishing their bodies with food. Food helps to ground the nervous system. Just a reminder, some people get so busy and they work so hard they don't eat well, and they might forget to eat. Exercise and movement also naturally flushes those hormones out of the body. Of course, movement is going to increase the good hormones that we have and increase our joyful hormones that can stimulate our neurotransmitters. Plus, getting that movement gets us grounded in the moment. Healthy touch. Healthy and safe touch is something that can really help ease trauma survivors in the moment. And I'm wondering if I can get a volunteer to come up on stage with me just for a minute. We're going to demo a little exercise. And if you want to try it, you can. Come on up. What's wrong? Come on up. You got it too.
Reason why is because that's something I need to learn.
Okay, so do you remember, who's had a baby that they might have rubbed their back, or a little one and they've rubbed their back? Do you mind if I turn you around? Okay, so here's an example of healthy touch that we can do. Okay, here's an example, sorry about that. Here's an example of healthy touch that we can do. A gentle rub on the upper part of the back, either counterclockwise or clockwise. There's something about stimulating this part of the body. This is safe, this is healthy touch, and this is going to help her body to release some stress hormones that she might be carrying. And if you feel like it, you can ask your neighbor or someone in the room if you want to do this for a minute. Just give it a try. This is something that can just take a moment. This spot on the body, just some gentle, healthy touch. It's not a massage, it's just rubbing in a circular motion. Can help to release stress hormones in the body. Do you want to rub me for a minute? Okay. So it's not a massage, it's just a light, circular, like this. You know how you would hold your baby or hold your toddler, hold your child, and rub their back? This is just a very soothing place on the body. So there's just a simple exercise that you could do. And of course, if we're being trauma-informed, it's not mandatory. Some people don't like to be touched, but if you do want to try some light, healthy touch, that's an opportunity. Thank you. Can I get you to keep this back on there? Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm just going to bring us back to attention just for a minute. Healthy touch. Okay, finish it up. Okay. All right, so we're gonna close here right away. Last thing about healthy touch. A lot of trauma survivors, or some trauma survivors who've experienced domestic violence or sexual violence, have very rare opportunities for safe and healthy touch. So exploring ways that healthy, non-threatening, non-sexual touch can be incorporated into your life or their lives. It's something to remember. We're human beings, and sometimes our personal experiences can limit our options for healthy touch. So that's there. Last thing here, working on mindfulness, getting into the present moment. It's just really important. So Melanie's given me the signal. You've got the PowerPoint. It's going to be on your stick. You've got your trauma-informed toolkit. At the end of this presentation, there's a lot of information and exploration about how traditional activities support healing from trauma. So I would really encourage you to take a look at that, and feel free to customize the presentation and use it in your own community. And feel free to contact me through LFMO if I can support you in planning or delivering this material in the safest and most enjoyable way that it can be delivered. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Victoria. Next, we have LMFOs Tamsin Fitzgerald to give us and Melanie to give us an overview of last year's presentation on informed consent. There'll be more time tomorrow.
Yeah, they are horribly bright. I know our BC delegates have to leave because they have a driver coming to get them to the airport. I apologize, but we have lots of agenda, and we just crammed something into our agenda that actually was supposed to be for tomorrow. So we need to kind of keep moving. So I know they want to take a picture, but I think I'm going to get them to find a place outside where they can take it, and we're going to still carry on. So one of the conversations that we wanted to bring back to this table, we did introduce it a little bit last year, was around informed consent and forced and coerced sterilization. So as we've been working on this issue and been a part of some committees and councils, and we've also gone to some conferences in relationship to this issue, it is a significant, serious issue. Women do not know when they're being violated. They do not know when they have a right, and they are being categorized and red flagged and treated differently than other people are. And we need to be able to create awareness around these topics. So I know that we've presented to both the Senate committee and to the parliamentary committee in relationship to many women who've been impacted and who don't even have the courage to come forward because of the guilt and the things that they feel associated with this. But quite often they've been put in situations where they go for some kind of medical engagement, whether it's having babies or other things, and they're being forced and coerced into signing documents that will force them into being sterilized. And I don't know if many of you know this, because I've heard this story over the years, that, a tubal ligation can be reversed. It cannot. That is a lie that they've been telling us. So many women who've been forced to have tubal ligations when they were far too young and still in childbearing years and want to change their mind about those decisions are not in a position to be able to do that. Those things do not happen in mainstream society. I want to tell you that those things are happening in our community because very often there are social workers and medical practitioners that are in institutions that pass judgment on we've had too many children, we don't live the right kind of life, maybe we're too poor. Whatever the reasons they are, maybe we're single parents, whatever the issues are, they pass judgment, and many of our women that have been taught to and are a part of various actions at this point tell stories about how they've laid in a hospital and they needed to have a cesarean or an epidural, and they haven't had access to those treatments until they sign a document saying that they can have a tubal ligation by the end of their giving birth. And we even have stories of women who've come forward, and I'm not trying to traumatize you guys, but we've had stories of young women as young as 14 years old that have been impacted and affected by these stories. So I know that many years ago, they used to say that institutions, they would actually put people, Indigenous women, including Métis women, I know there was one in Alberta where they would institutionalize women. They'd say that it was because she was a mental health issue, or her behaviors couldn't be controlled. They would lock them up in these institutions and they would sterilize them. And actually there were successful lawsuits where women were compensated for the fact that they weren't ever able to bear children, and that somebody passed the judgment on them that they would never be a good mother. It leads into other things too. There's issues around how children are apprehended right from the birthing room. There's just all kinds of things where people's rights are being violated, and they don't have the resources to fight back. They don't have the ability to hire lawyers to be part of class action suits, to be able to change how we're treated. One of the things that we are pushing for is that we want this criminalized, and we've talked about that. It's not that we want to see doctors and nurses and social workers sitting in a jail cell, but I have to tell you, I really do believe that if they were at threat of being put in a jail cell or being held to account for their manipulation of our Indigenous women, they would think twice before they would ever do it again. We need to change attitudes. We need to change, and we have met with some doctors and medical professionals and people that support the movement that we need to change how this has all happened, and that they're not doing us a favor by trying to control who we are and what we are. A part of our culture, a part of us being Métis women, is about our ability to be able to bring life to this world, and about us being able to pass on what we know to the future generations. Those rights should never be taken away from us. We have the right, and to convince some young girl at 20 years old that she no longer needs to have that right is wrong. And they don't do it in mainstream society. In fact, I know the policies at most hospitals and institutions are that if you're having a baby and you're young, doctors will discourage you from doing anything that will permanently alter your ability to reproduce. And they'll tell you, we're not going to do that to you when you have your baby. You can make that decision at some later date and come back to us at that point and consider all those options. So that's part of the work that we're doing. I know Tamsin has a PowerPoint, and one of the things that we want to do is create a graphic. We need to be able to start talking to our young women and letting them know and empower them. Jean keeps telling us to get loud. Well, we need to get loud about a whole lot of things, and this is one of them. We need to educate our young women that we need to make sure they know that these things are not things that they have to agree to, and that they have a right to say no, and they have a right to be able to demonstrate that other people's judgments of their value systems is not an acceptable thing. So I'll let Tamsin now do the presentation from the PowerPoint.
Thank you, President Amenaho. My name is Tamsin Fitzgerald. I'm a senior policy analyst with Latham Michifo de Pemsowak, and I'm very honored to be here in front of you today, so thank you. In the interest of time, I will be going through this quite quickly because the real activity lies with you fine people, so cool. All right, so last year we did speak quite in depth about this issue, and so I'll just very briefly cover the questions that we asked and what we learned from you fine people. So last year, delegates were divided into small groups, such as you are now, and we asked you, do you know what informed consent is, particularly in relation to women's bodies? Do you know about any forced or coerced sterilizations in your community? How have these procedures impacted your community as well as the women within them? And what is the best way to get the message out about forced and coerced sterilization to both Métis women and to healthcare providers? Just continuing those questions, we asked, do women in your community have access to preventative healthcare services? How do you see women and girls' health improving in your community? And does your community have access to traditional medicines and have cultural supports, such as access to an elder? So last year, President Amanaho did recognize the need for both federal and provincial governments to address the issue of forced and coerced sterilization. And President Amanaho also noted that it is very important to raise awareness in these communities to ensure that young Métis women entering hospitals are informed of what constitutes forced sterilization and what their rights are. So I will just touch very briefly on the key points because President Amanaho did speak about them as well. Many Métis women feel intimidated when going to the hospital or visiting their doctor, and that's due to racialized experiences that they've either witnessed or have experienced firsthand. And often a lot of these women, as we all know, do not feel comfortable going to the police or the RCMP about these experiences. So there's very few safety nets that are in place for women that have been through these experiences. And because of this, many women don't visit the doctor, and if they do, they're not told the full extent of what's happening, and their reasons for visiting are often dismissed. This is a common issue that women across the board face, but it's particularly prevalent for Métis women as well. And like President Amanaho noted, trauma leads to silence. There's a culture of secrecy and shame surrounding this issue. In Métis cultures, to bear children is to pass on culture and knowledge. And when that right is taken away from you without your consent, a lot of women feel ashamed and don't discuss it. And so this is happening behind closed doors, and healing isn't possible with this. More points continued is that there needs to be government-mandated engagement with healthcare providers who are on the ground in these rural communities and who are providing services especially to marginalized Métis women. Information needs to be integrated into post-secondary education training, not only for nurses and doctors, but also for social workers as well, because it's also social workers who will make the assumption that this woman is too poor, she has too many children, therefore she needs to sign these documents right now before she leaves the hospital. Métis youth especially need to be engaged on this topic, not only so that we can hear what they're experiencing right now today, but also so that we can prevent this from happening by letting them know what their rights are. And then, of course, you all echo the importance for awareness strategies, whether it's on social media, publications in the Moccasin Telegraph, word of mouth, or forums such as this one. So very briefly, we discussed what informed consent is, and based on the UN definition, it's a collective decision made by rights holders and reached through a customary decision-making process in the community. It needs to be freely given, and it needs to be well in advance of the procedure that is taking place. The challenge here is that this definition is not Métis specific, so we challenged you last year to come up with one, and thank you to you all, we did. So LFMO's definition of informed consent, and this is the issue that you'll be looking at for your infographic soon, is informed consent must include language that is understood by all parties about decisions pertaining to every aspect of a Métis woman's well-being, whether that's physical, mental, spiritual, or emotional. To take it further, consent should include action to eliminate language barriers, to simplify medical terms, and to include access to support provided by trained Métis patient advocates and healthcare professionals who have Métis cultural competency training. So now I'm going to defer to you fine people about, we're gonna ask you to flex those creative muscles and get your designing juices flowing. And for 15 minutes, we're going to ask you to reflect on these questions on the board here. Which of your rights are you aware of when you enter into a healthcare setting? And we've listed some examples for you. And then are these rights being respected when you enter into these healthcare settings? So please, take some 15 minutes to draw whatever comes to mind. A picture tells 1,000 words, and we will develop this further into an infographic. So if you could just take the next 15 minutes, we would appreciate it. Thank you. Oops, sorry.
Test 1, 2. Well, I know you guys are still on a break, but I do want to give you guys heads up. So tonight, we have a very special show, so you guys have to come back. It's in this room for sure, because I made sure that. And it is Scott Ward and Dakota House. I don't know if any of you guys know who that is, but they are going to do a psychic hypnotist show. So I guarantee you're all going to be entertained. There are parts of you that he's going to disclose that you never even knew existed. So make sure you come back.
Okay, we're gonna get started again, so if you want to grab your seats, everyone. Next up, we're gonna have a traditional knowledge and culture sharing session from Sharon Morin. Sharon was born into a large politically active Métis family. She spends a lot of time participating in many political and cultural activities on top of growing up traditionally. After finishing school and taking various business courses, she worked at Métis Urban Housing. Sharon started the Michif Cultural and Resource Institute in historical St. Albert alongside retired Senator Thelma Chalifoux, located in a historical house referred to as a Métis Living Museum and Resource Center. She initially volunteered at the museum developing and leading programs and was the lead Aboriginal programmer, developing curriculum related to Aboriginal programs for 7 years. She is currently the program manager for the Musée Héritage Museum and Heritage Sites. She is the past president of the Aboriginal Women's Professional Association, co-founder and board president of the Michif Cultural and Resource Institute, community member on the St. Albert National Aboriginal Day Committee, and was on the steering committee for the St. Albert Founders Walk, working on a 150th anniversary legacy project for the city of St. Albert. In 2013, she was nominated and received the Edmonton Fierce Award in the category of empowerment. Here to share with us today is Sharon Morin.
Tansai Kiwao. Sharon Morin Dishnakashan. Mr. Hai Sigigigan, Pe Manitou Sigigigan, Pe Amisquichi Waskagan Doschin. Nia Machifasqueo. Nia Pixquan along a Machif upsis. So I'm just learning how to speak Machif again. It's a language that was spoken by my grandfather and my great-grandmother in Lac St. Anne. And it's a language that comes from the heart. I grew up in a northern community speaking or learning Cree and understanding Cree, and it wasn't until I started really learning Machif that I felt that I was speaking the language of my ancestors. So, yeah, thank you. So I'm going to just share a little bit about the work that I do. I hope I know how to use this thing. I work in St. Albert. St. Albert is the oldest non-fortified community in Alberta. We host the Father Lacombe Chapel, which is the oldest wooden building in Alberta still standing. But they just thought that the wooden chapel started St. Albert. And when I went there, I was like, no. My people have been here since 1803, and in Lac St. Anne even before that. So it was the Métis that was encouraging the church to stop and make the chapel, and Lacombe stopped the mission in St. Albert, or in Lac St. Anne, and moved it to St. Albert. I'm gonna go through some slides rather quickly because I'm gonna kind of cut it up a bit. So this is something that I found from Louis Riel about keeping our knowledge. We need to pass it down, we need to write it down, we need to preserve it because our youth need to know where they come from. They need to know that word Otapimsuak. That's Lac St. Anne. And you know, I'm going to just say that I am a knowledge keeper. I'm not a historian. This is the language or the history as I know it. It's been passed down to me through generations, and it's something that I love to share and I'm passionate about. There's Mission Hill. You can see the residential school on the, it would be on the left there. When I went to St. Albert, they didn't think that there was residential schools. They called them the convent. They called it the orphanage. It was the industrial school. But my great-grandmother, Julia Boucher, was in that school. She went in as a treaty woman, and they took her treaty rights away. She got paid, and they paid the church $47 for her time being in the treaty, and then they sign her up for Métis scrip and get $160 and use that as well. So that's my Muslim. That's Paul Villeneuve. He was First World War veteran in the Home Guard for the Second World War. I never met him, but he's shaped who I am today because of the woman that raised me. There's my grandparents there in St. Albert about 1958. He was the one that kept that Métis story alive because my grandmother was a white woman, but she was also fearful for her children that were dark. And so there was no other language but English spoken. They did not go to residential school. They went to public school in Calgary. They did not go to church. They would church shop. They never attached to anything like that. But he was underground politically and being involved in the political movement in southern Alberta. There's my mother. I can't do anything without acknowledging Thelma Shalafu. I use her talking stick, and I bring her talking stick with me. My mom was the first Aboriginal woman appointed to the Canadian Senate. And when she was in Ottawa, she was very lonesome for community. Lots of Indigenous people work in Ottawa. They were lonesome for community, so she started weekly coffee sessions. Every Wednesday morning, they would come to her office, and the new people would get a ceramic pair of moccasins. And one day, somebody brought this to her, and they said, "Senator, this is your Métis talking stick." So this talking stick went with her to the Red Chamber. It went with her when she went to meet dignitaries around the world. And I remember the day sitting in the Michif Institute when she was 82 years old, and she handed this to me. She says, "It's now up to you, girl." So she always said, her dad was her best friend, and he said, "Never forget, my girl, we are the Métis and we are the best." And that's how I was raised. So I'm very honored to be that way. So for her, the work was really being involved in community. And the Métis in St. Albert were always very active. It was a vibrant community. There was over 1,000 people there in 1885. 860 of them were identifying as Métis. They were living on river lots and prospering. They were economically motivated. They were farmers. They were going on mass buffalo hunts. They had a pemmican factory. They were supplying the fort with fish and pemmican. And when the land claims started coming through, that's when the papers start writing about the people in St. Albert. Start calling them savages, say they're holding secret meetings. And the Métis at that time, led by a man by the name of Sam Cunningham, who is the greatest Sam Cunningham you could ever meet, wrote back and they said, "How can you even think that of us? How can you say that when we are invested in this community? We have attachment to the land, not only through our Indigenous, our ancestral way, but also through the Bible that taught us that we must use the land." And they responded back, and they were actually, the government was wanting to do, what they did in Batoche, and the Métis in St. Albert wrote a petition. And they had all the Métis people signed it, and they sent it to Ottawa with Dan Maloney, Father Leduc, and Sam Cunningham. And if you go into the archives of the House of Commons, they write in there about the Métis and Bishop Grandin in St. Albert. And they allowed the Métis in St. Albert to keep their original 56 river lots when they decimated Batoche. And so it's a really interesting story. Something else that happened with the Métis there in St. Albert too at that time was they formed the first Canadian militia. And they were known as the St. Albert Mounted Rifles. And they were set up to protect the area of anybody coming in. And that included Riel. That included Big Bear and his people. They were protecting what they had built and what they were working for. They were still in support of Riel. They weren't supporting the violence. So there's our river lots there. The river lots now are kind of cut up. We're working on building and restoring 2 river lots with a Belcourt house and a Cunningham house on there. So those kind of things are shared with students. We have kids come from all across the Edmonton region, and we do programming with them, and I'm really excited to start land-based programming with them. There's the list of the St. Albert Mounted Rifles. Those are all very strong names from our Métis homeland in Alberta. The Naults, the Donalds, the Greys, the Augiers, the Chalafoux, the Boudreaux, the Belroses, the Larondels, Savards, Vandel, Paget, Belcourt, Courtepat. All of those names are on those river lots that I just showed you. So one of the things that I'm really proud of is the work that we do within the community, but more importantly, the work that we do with students. 2 years ago, we got an award from the Alberta Museums Association for leadership in education. And it was stemmed from our heart project that we were doing. We were trying to really get the community to understand and acknowledge the history of the residential schools. There was 2 in St. Albert. There was the Uville home, and there was the Poundmaker site that was run by the United Church. And we were really wanting them to work on this, and we had a healing garden committee, it's what we called ourselves. So what we did was we went out to the schools with little pink paper hearts, and we had the kids planting intention. So intention of having this, intention of remembering, and intention of learning. And all those little hearts had little messages on there for the city, but also for the kids that had been in residential schools. And we planted them on the site where we had the proposed garden. And that really motivated City Council to start listening more. We had the teachers involved, we had and I mean little kids like grade 1, 2s, and 3 children. So there's our little healing garden there. We had ceremony for them. We had drummers out when they were planting, and we made it an event for them. That's the residential school that we were talking about on the hill there. So there's my friend Amy Bautista. Amy's a fantastic teacher in St. Albert. She does so much with her children to make them aware, and that's her grade 1 kids. And they'd walk down from Muriel Martin School, and they all planted their little their little hearts for us. We wanted to really make sure that we honored our elders, and that we made sure that when we had that committee, that it was not a city project, it's a community project. We had survivors, we had elders, we had all people from all communities come in and consult us. That's one of our Aboriginal veterans, John. That's the opening of Kagisi-Mogamik. And that's the word that came from the elders at Alexander. That's what they wanted us to call it. So there is a video there. Can you get the video to go? Okay, there's a 3-minute video I want to show you about that day when we opened it.
The Healing Garden is where anybody can come. Anywhere, any place in this world you come from, you're welcome to this garden.
This is to be a place of truth and reconciliation, a visible sign of our community's commitment to walk in right relations with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and with all nations.
Today is about honoring and recognizing the students who attended residential schools. The St. Albert area was home to 2 residential schools, the St. Albert Indian Residential School, Uville, and the Edmonton Indian Residential School, Poundmaker.
I would say to all teachers, to educators, to parents and stuff, that the children need to know the truth, because you need to know where you come from to know where you're going.
This is a permanent fixture where people will come and use it for history teachings and for teachings of what happened in our area. So I believe that this is going to help bring the Aboriginal people and also the non-Aboriginal people together here to learn.
Education is like our buffalo. We depended on the buffalo for survival, and now I think education is our survival again.
So really wanted a place was definitely for the residential schools, but healing in general. People from any walk of life that had experienced any kind of trauma.
The committee was the driving force behind this. We had 2 years of really, it was a tough road at times.
It really was an effort of love from all of us. It's a community, it's not a city project, it's not a church project, it's a community project, and community needs to take hold of it.
To see this place, it took us 2 years to get here. It's been a long, long journey.
When you see it on paper and then you see it in real, it's just so rewarding. It's final, it's here, it's real.
So we invite all families, any family, any background, anything, to come to our garden and come and join our circle. So from here on, we will walk together. We will walk beside each other, and we will help each other on this journey to our truth and reconciliation. And the day of reconciliation is when we stop saying they, us. When we can say the word we, then that's reconciliation to me.
That was such a magical morning. It was so foggy that morning, and City Hall is right across from it. And you got out of the building and you couldn't even see across the river. It was so foggy. And as we're walking over there, they're getting ready to do the pipe ceremony, and they do the pipe. And as soon as they came out of the teepee from doing the pipe, it was like the clouds parted and the sun came out, and it was just this beautiful morning of celebration. So it's a project I'm really, really proud of. We also do Métis Week. I've done Métis Week in St. Albert. My mom started it about 16 years ago. We partner with Sir George Simpson School. The kids come, they read poetry. We've had kids there that are learning how to play fiddle. This year was our largest. We had grade 2 students come from Lois Hall School, and they sang a Métis Voyageur song. And the teacher, Jared Latant, who is a Métis man from Lac-Saint-Anne, had gone into his workshop and cut the kids out each their own oar. And then the kids decorated the oars. And so when they came and did the song, they were paddling those oars. Those oars are all going to go up on the hallway at Lois Hall School. So it's really, really special. Just some of our partners that we do. I work closely with school divisions. If you can get in on, there's a couple in the area that have a wisdom and guidance council or a principal cohort. I've got myself in on those, and I'm really able to impart our history, but also encourage them to have people come out to the schools. It's part of the Alberta curriculum, and so they need resources, and I try to help as much as I can in that way. I can't go because the musée we just talked about is my work. This is where my heart is. This was started by my mom, and we call it Michif Cultural Connections now. My mom's been gone for 3 years. I started this because my sister Debbie. Sorry. So this is Juna House. Juna House is a house that was built in 1895, still in the same place that it was in St. Albert, and this is where we house Michif Cultural Connections. It's a little gem of a place where we like to do cultural classes. We bring in elders. One of my people is Joyce Beaver, and I've known Joyce since I was a little girl. She was very good friends with my mom. She drives in from Wabasca, Sandy Lake, and does classes with us. She's 78 years old. She drives her van. She has a neck that doesn't move properly because of a birth defect, and she's been making moccasins for 60 years. And it's just amazing, the community, and that's what I want to, the most important thing is that we build community. We have people come back as repeats because they want to sit with us. They like sitting in the house, and we create an area where it's safe that we can share. But we don't just do it with it's not just for Métis people. It's for everybody. I'm a firm believer that we bring our people together through our culture, and people are interested in our culture. So having them partake and sit and listen to Joyce and the stories that she tells it's worth gold. It's worth its weight in gold. It's amazing what we do. And I say that because I'm so proud of it, but I also hear people say that. So there's a panel out, that's part of the Founders Walk panel. There's a panel out in front of Michif or Michif Cultural Connections, and that's the panel. It's the Métis panel. And I love standing in front of there and reading it and looking at the pictures. There's some fierce families in those pictures. And there's who runs our Michif. That's my son Joshua. He's my youngest son. And that's Joyce in the middle there, and Josh is amazing. So if you're on Facebook, look up Michif Cultural Connections. He's always putting stuff up there. He's always promoting what we do, great information. And he's one of our up-and-comers, that young guy. Very proud of him. So finger weaving is one of the ways, and back weaving is one of the ways that I interact with people. I'll do presentations, and kids will stand there or sit there and look at you. But when you get down and you start to finger weave with them and interact on that one-in-one, it's amazing the questions that will come up. And the kids that think that they can't do it, and you teach them how to do it, and you see the pride in them. There's this school outside of Edmonton. It's called Oak Hill. And it's where they keep boys that are in care. It's like a big group home kind of area. There's little cabins and things like that. And I was invited there by my friend Carrie Tremblay, who's a vice principal. And these are boys that have some issues. And so I went into the one class there, and it was a class that had the kids that were really kind of hardened children, And there's one little boy, and he's got his hat on, and his hat's down in front of his, face, and his hair's hanging down, and he's not wanting to weave, So I just went over there, and I said, "Can I weave for you? I'll just weave one for you because I think everybody needs one." And so I started weaving, and he says to me, "I think I can do that." And so I gave it to him, and he proceeded to take apart what I had done. And then he took it and he wove a perfect weave. And he took his hat off while he was doing it. And he just started weaving, and he started to smile. And it was amazing to see. And the teacher walked in, and she was floored. She said, "I've never seen this class as quiet and as focused as it is." And it was just that little act of finger weaving and sharing with them. And it was magical. It was just amazing. So that's me at K-Days doing one of those crazy days that I do sometimes. Something else that we do too are the Michif classes. And I'm going to tell you right now that this is building community. This is community. These are people that come back all the time because they want to sit with the same people. These are people that take every week to come. Even when it was 40 below, they were coming because they wanted to sit with the group and be part of the group. We've done 3 runs now of the Michif classes. It's done, we partner with Further Ed. The person that instructs is Graham Andrews. Graham then takes all the fee that would be paid to him, and he donates it back to Michif. He said that he was raised to not be paid for what he does. So he shares it like that. And so it's a little bit of a bonus for us. But because of that, Joshua's now on the Further Ed board. So it's continuing on that way. There's our group there. And I want to point out the lady in the red. That's Margaret Little. And Margaret is part of the Callahoo family. But Margaret grew up, she grew up. She enlisted in the army and lived over in Germany for quite some time. So she lost connection with her family over here. She started coming to these classes, and I was talking to her one evening, and I said, so how you doing, Margaret? You know, like, are you learning the words of that? And she looked at me, she said, no, I'm not learning the words. She said, but I'm remembering my kukum and my mom and my aunties saying all of these words. And I just thought that was marvelous, marvelous. So there's some of the stuff that we do. And my pictures suck because I do my own PowerPoints, and I'm not good at arranging pictures, so Charmaine's got a job for me. But there we are down on the bottom there doing finger weaving. Those are some of the moccasins. The ones in the middle are ones that we have in our collection. And then my great-grandfather, Sever Villeneuve, that's his sash that's on the side there with the traditional moccasins. But, you know, this little act of keeping this alive, keeping Joyce's teachings alive and her stories alive are very important to me. And one of the things that I want to tell about, and just in conclusion, is that, you know, we want to keep our history alive. It's important that we do that. And one of the ways that we do that is we start submitting names to municipalities and to school boards of Métis people in our area that need to be recognized. And I did that for my mom right after she passed away. I put her name in. And we got a call, and they're naming a school after her. It opens in September 2021. But also on that same day, like we had to keep everything secretive, also on that same day, they announced a school for Dr. Ann Anderson, who is another huge Métis matriarch in our area. And they didn't know who to get a hold of they didn't know how to get a hold of her family. And I was like, well, you should have got a hold of me because I could have told you. So in 2021 in Edmonton, there'll be 2 schools named after 2 great Métis ladies. And I'm so excited to support those schools. And so I encourage you, you know, they're naming streets, they're naming buildings, they're naming schools. Let's get our people's names out there, and let's get these buildings named after our people. We need to memorialize our people. I didn't bring business cards, so there's my business card up there. If anybody wants to get a hold of me, I want to say merci, hi, and thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for that really touching presentation and for all the acts of service that you do. It's a real gift to us all. Yeah. So next we have LMFO strategic directions, and leading our next session, we have Melanie and Lisa. The MMIWG session.
My hips are tired, actually. I'm going to be honest with you. So I trip and crawl upstairs. No. So we're actually doing the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women piece at this point. I know we've been bouncing around on the agenda, and I apologize for that. But I've been trying to squeeze everything in, and things have been shifting and changing as we go. So just bear with us. Wow, I didn't do that.
I got your back.
So, yeah. La Femme Michif has been the lead on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls file. Actually, I want to be honest. We have been at the forefront of this for maybe all of 10 plus years now. We have been pushing. We pushed even when it didn't seem to be so fashionable to push, and we had governments that were pushing back. We were there pushing. And so we have continued to be a part of the MMIWG. And we actually have been given the directive both from the MNC Assembly as well as from the Métis National Council governing members, the Board of Governors, to continue to move forward on both on the national inquiry process as well as with moving forward and being the voice of for the Métis in relationship to helping build an implementation plan that will help us move forward to help change direction as to how we deal with the missing and murdered Indigenous women's issue. The first thing I often talk about, I'm not very good at being scripted, so you'll notice I don't read that. They try. But Jean teaches me I have to get loud and use my own voice. So one of the things I do talk about, one of my most frustrating things about the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is that people think this is a women's issue. It's not a women's issue. It's a human issue. We are all impacted and affected when our mothers or our daughters or our sisters, our aunties, our cousins, this affects all of us. Even if it's the men that go missing and are murdered, it impacts us as a community. It creates historical trauma for all of us, and we need to stop looking at this like the women will fix it. We're not going to fix it by ourselves. We're only going to do this as a nation of people. So our involvement, I think I already did all that, didn't I? No, well, anyway, it was reaffirmed on August 29th, 2019, between the governing members that we would lead the implementation plan on the missing and murdered Indigenous women with the Government of Canada. And we've been playing a lead role in that. And we have one of those people over there. No, just kidding. Frank Weldon from CERNA helps lead the file for the Government of Canada. And he works pretty closely with us. And we continue to work with him. And Ashley, I got to tell you, even in a room full of strong Métis women, when we're having engagement sessions, he's pretty good. He doesn't run away from us, and he still keeps coming back. So, Frank, stand up and so everybody knows who you are.
Come back with a smile.
He's pretty good with us, that's for sure. We actually have a project for the implementation plan that's engaging each one of our governing members. And we want to build a national strategy for Métis women and Métis families that's going to be relevant and efficient and effective for our Métis communities. Oh, and I'm not, sorry, I may not always do this 2S LGBTQIA thing. But we do include, we have to do everything based on an intersectional lens, and we do continue to support and encourage the engagement to the LGBTQ, sorry, the alphabet soup. And we will. I mean, the thing is that this isn't just, like I said, this isn't just a women's issue. So, we're taking a whole of government approach. We have a technical team. I don't know where we're at here on these things. We have a technical team. Oh, she went by that. So that advise us on this project. And so part of what's going to happen actually, and part of even what today is about, is, and actually I want to introduce her at this point. Is she in here? Joy? Oh, I couldn't see her over there. Joy Sinclair is our contractor who's going to help us do the engagement sessions in all the provinces. And we're going to do engagement sessions in each one of the provinces. In fact, Alberta over here are going to be one of the ones. Actually, Saskatchewan's first on March 14th. Alberta's is on March 20th. So we need BC and... BC's on March 28th. Okay, March 28th. So we need Ontario and Manitoba, and we probably are going to be doing 2 other ones, but we'll set those up independently. One will be for the LGBTQ2SS. Oh, it's not there no more. So we'll have a session so that the LGBT2 people can come together and have their own conversation about what they believe we need. And we also would like to have the engagement of one youth session that will help bring all the youth together, because youth are being at risk, and we really need to work with them to give a voice, and we need to really work with them to identify how they see themselves as part of this picture. So we are going to also maybe try to host a session with some of the families of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and that one will be independent of the other ones as well. So we're planning, oh yes, also exciting piece. We're also trying to get input from the community at a grassroots level. So we are going to try to put together, we'll work with Joy, and I have an amazing staff person. I have lots of, because Lisa's amazing staff people too, but Tamsin is really good on our social media fronts, and we're going to build a questionnaire for Métis women and Métis community people to respond from a community level and to get some engagement and understanding of where they would like to see us move forward on an implementation plan. There are several, I don't know when Lisa's supposed to have a turn up here.
3 slides ago.
Here.
I defer to the master.
You see, we weren't very well scripted, were we? So one of the things that we recognized when we've been working as a technical committee to come up with this, there's several moving parts, and we know that we want to, whatever resources we're able to acquire from a federal government level and hopefully a provincial government level to deal with the issues around missing and murdered Indigenous women, we're hoping that more than 85% of those resources are actually on the ground dealing with some of the things that we've already even talked about over the last few days, where we have like on-the-ground services for Indigenous people, whether they're in justice, because the issues around missing and murdered Indigenous women are not just about, you know, domestic violence. They're not just about the limited scope of a murdered woman being found. There are issues of what happens to us when we go to court. There are issues of what happens when we are families who have a loved one that's gone missing and we can't seem to find any police or anybody to be an advocate for us and to move forward to deal with the issues that we're facing. There is just, the supports don't exist. So we're hoping that with the work that we're going to do and what these engagement sessions are going to help is to identify what do our Métis Nation governments need to help deliver and be a part of affecting change so we don't have as many missing and murdered Indigenous women. We want to see prevention, intervention, and engagement if they are victims of crime and trauma. We want to see all those things happening. We know it's not going to happen tomorrow. We know that nobody's going to write a big check and it'll fix everything. We don't believe that. But then at a national level, I'm not even looking at this thing, obviously. So at a national level, we need to also do some changing of the guard process. Some of the stuff that Senator Pate talked to us about already, some of the stuff that Jean has talked to us about, we need to work at a national level to develop and review policies and legislation so we can change how this has gone. Jean told us last night about stories about that are from the 17 and 1800s, which demonstrated how women were treated and devalued. Those things haven't changed that much over those many hundreds of years, and we need to find a way to affect those changes. So that's part of what motivates me, and that's part of what I'd like to see us do, is that there will be we're hoping to push, and we did talk a little bit about this the other day, we want to see a law reform entity process, whatever we need to do for missing and murdered Indigenous women. We need to have the kind of expertise reviewing laws and understanding how these things impact and affect us and how we can feed into that and change things so that, because many times, and I don't know how many stories have already been shared here, many times women who end up in these situations in violence end up also becoming victims of the criminal justice system and being criminals themselves. So we need to change all of that, and we need to make it so that women have the ability to move forward and feel safe and be secure in their community. It's actually a right. We have the right to safety, and we have the right to security. And rather than police always looking at us like we're a victim of something or something that they would like to shake off the bottom of their shoe, they should be there advocating and protecting us and making sure we have a safe world to live in. So I'll let Lisa now go with all of her stuff here that I'm not reading.
It's really difficult to want to interrupt President Omanaho when she speaks. This is truly her passion and her embodiment in the last 10 years, and I can tell you, you couldn't have found a stronger leader to help guide our women and our children and families through this process of the inquiry that instead of being trauma-informed was quite trauma-infused. So I just want to thank big time Lady Boss for all the work she does in MMIWG.
Yes, the fine Lady Boss.
So, and I also would like to step back for a moment on something that Melanie did say today, and just in the interest of just some updating. She did introduce our partner at CERN, Frank Weldon, but for those of you who heard my little story yesterday about our friend Frank, he is actually Francois. And it'll be a long day before I ever get Melanie to say Francois. But anyways, through this process as well, we know the inquiry has been challenging for us, to say the least, but we can't dwell on that any longer. We can't stay stuck in that place. We actually can author and change the reality for us on a go-forward basis. It is literally in our hands right now. The government has come to us and asked us, when we do an implementation plan on the calls for action of the inquiry report and our calls for Miskotaha in our Métis Perspectives report, they came to us and asked, how should we design this framework? And I just want to be really clear about a national framework. This doesn't mean a federal framework, so just one level of government. It's not one level of government's responsibility. This is, in fact, a whole of government, a whole of society approach to ensuring that no more of our women or our children go missing or murdered. So moving forward, as I say, we can't dwell on that process that has injured so many of us in the national inquiry. We need to take this invitation from the government. And here today, we are going to begin the groundwork to providing for the government this outline of what this national framework needs to look like in order to ensure that the Métis reality is expressed and that we're not hidden in some pan-Indigenous approach to MMIWG. It is a reality for First Nations, it's a reality for Inuit, but we as Métis people have a voice, and I'm going to tell you, we had a little offline conversation earlier, and the strong and proud of Métis women, the stuff that has come out of this session this week, I'm going to tell you what you have to say today, I bet you will translate into a national action plan. So please, we're going to go into an engagement session next. Please know that we're going to take what you say at these tables. It will help define what we're going to be going out to our communities in our engagement sessions. They're very, very simple questions that we're going to ask of you today, but ever so complex. I just wanted to step back to our Métis Perspectives report just in order to give it a little context. We had 64 calls for Muskotaha. All of you were provided with a copy in your kit when you arrived. We had identified 10 different areas within that report of recommendations or what we need to see changed immediately. Identity, data collection and research, consultation and engagement, child welfare, criminal justice, health and wellness, intergovernmental affairs, services, jurisdiction is a huge issue for Métis people. We talked even at that point about an implementation committee. And even at our nation's level, we now have an implementation committee. And we need to talk about that piece around prevention and awareness. So as we go forward in these questions that we're going to pose to you, please keep these areas in mind. I think it's easier in the interest of time to stay at your table. If you would like to join a different table and hear a different voice, I'd welcome you. But if you're comfortable staying where you are, please do. We do have some government partners here that are offered to take notes. If you want a note taker, just signal us.
Frank will do it.
Frank's a good writer. Frank will do anything. He's in a room full of women. Actually, Frank did come and present to our technical committee on implementation, and his presentation to us was so informative. So we certainly do have some really good people supporting us. So today we're just going to focus on the who, the what, and the how. When we're looking at this implementation framework on a go-forward basis, who, from a Métis perspective, who needs to be at the table in order to develop that national action plan? And who needs to be part of that discussion? So what we want to get, when we want to get a concept of here is, how does this engagement look like? Engagement is a really formal process, because in my family, and I'm sure other Métis families were similar, the engagement process took place around the kitchen table. So that formal word engagement, please consider it in all it means to Métis people. As far as what? When we looked at those priorities in our calls for Muskotaha, what are the most important priority areas that we need to focus on in the development of framework? What are going to be the immediate, and I'm very leery of saying the immediate pieces that we need to help stop this pain? What do we need to focus on first? One of the things that came out loud and clear in our report is the Family Information Liaison Unit, the FILUS as we call it. We've heard so many times that we haven't been able to access, our families haven't been able to access, and especially our remote communities. So that would be an example of an immediate reaction. We've already heard that, so if you write it down, I just know you're just following my lead. The how do we ensure at the end of the day that this national action plan is going to make a difference? How do we maintain that accountability? How do we know we're doing what we set out to do in this national action plan? What's going to happen at the end? We're going to, we meaning Joy, is going to go out and do these engagement sessions, and she's going to create this report to us, bring it back to the technical committee for advisement, and then we're going to present it to the government as soon as possible as they develop a strategy for this national implementation plan. So if you have any questions, Melanie is a wealth of knowledge. I'm here to help out as well. And I think we have, half an hour? Would you like to add anything?
Yeah. So I really, it's really important to us that you focus on things from a community level. I know we're working on things at a higher level than that sometimes, but it needs to be something that is going to work for us at a community level. We'll work on dealing with things like trying to get statistics and create the research and the bodies of information. There's developments, I talked about the Law Reform Commission thing, the idea that we want to push for. But we also want to see a Métis Healing Foundation so that families and communities that are impacted by these issues can actually access the supports and resources that they need to seek healing. At a national or bigger scale level, we'll deal with those things. And if you have ideas over a period of time about things like that, we can add them later. But for us right now, we need to be able to deal at a community level with some of the things that you're going to bring forward. And the other thing that you may want to add on to this is, or when you answer who needs to be a part of these discussions, I know one key piece right now, and we tried to say that we want to do an engagement session with them, is we need to hear from the families. We can't always be about, as much as we've been trained as women to be the fixers of everybody, we can't, without having their voice at this table, even begin to understand what they're going to need. So their voice is important in this process too, but there might be others as well. So please keep that in mind, because as much insight as you can give us is going to be as strong as our implementation plan is. So get to work. So how are you guys doing with all your, I see Marilyn laughing. I think she's done over there. So when we were doing the report, somebody told us, and the girls looked it up actually in the Michif dictionary, Miskatoha was supposed to mean change. One of our elders said that it means changing your clothes. So we still think the word is appropriate though, because we're going to redress how people train and work with us. So just to let you guys know, we're going to be ending the day here right away, but I have a bit of an announcement. It's just a little one, though. Some time ago, we applied to YES, which is Youth Employment Services. We wanted to do a program to help young Métis women get into leadership. We're working with the Banff Center to help build a Métis-specific youth leadership program that people will be able to use as credit for their university classes. And we just received word, Lisa will pass out here shortly, but we've been approved for funding. And just to give you some idea of the magnitude of what it is that we've just accomplished, it's over $13 million. We are going to change the lives of as many young Métis women as we absolutely can. So if you guys could, after that little announcement, pack up your papers and give them to Crystal. We're not going to go through a plenary because there's just too many things within the MMIWG, and I know that there's massive amounts of information. I want to tell you guys, I do know you're going to be getting a thing that USB that's going to have all of the PowerPoints and stuff on, but I have an amazing staff team, and they will make sure everything is on the website, all the reports and stuff. As we build all the information and materials, you'll be able to get them. We want you to be able to see them because we want your feedback in case we misrepresent anything you brought to our tables. So please take the time to look at that stuff. So we are going to let you go for the day, but make sure you come back for Scott and Dakota House. It will be a lot of fun. A good way to heal from the trauma and the triggering things that we do and the work that we do is through laughter, and that you will have fun, enjoy, and have laughter. Go ahead.
Can I just say something? Is this on?
I don't.
Yeah.
AV?
I just said to our table, this was a really heavy way to end the day, and I just want to say, if anyone needs a hug, I'm really squishy, and I will hug you all, because this is a really heavy topic. So, just putting it out there.
Thank you. I think I'm more squishy than she is, though. Anyway, thank you guys for being amazing, and thank you for all of your engagement.